So this is going to be a kind of a long video and a rant, a little rambly, so I apologize in advance for that, but I need to get this out. So a couple of my friends have been kind of asking me recently, social media friends, not IRL friends, why I seem so obsessed with relationships, why I seem so obsessed with women, always talking about it all the time, always frustrated, woo woo. Which that itself is a topic for another video. You know, I talk endlessly about the anima and the animus, vis-a-vis Carl Jung, and how that men and women represent polarities of one another's psyche that is necessary to integrate in order to achieve self-actualization, enlightenment. That's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how that I view life, which kind of relates to that because women are the life principle, men are the consciousness principle, women are the life principle. I want to talk about my view of life. How that I approach life. Now, I am thoroughly a Vajrayana practitioner, and I view the universe through the lens of Vajrayana thoroughly. I believe that there's nothing that's left out in Vajrayana. Unfortunately, what we have today has a lot of Tibetan trappings, and so it's not very attractive generally. And so what I really want to do is distill Vajrayana and present it to a Western audience, because nothing else has the beginning, middle, and end of the path fleshed out so flawlessly in such a flawless philosophical system as Vajrayana. Nothing is missing from it. You know, it's really otherworldly, the fact that we even have this tradition with us. But it's no good if we can't talk about it in plain terms. So that's how I approach life. I view life as the mandala of our awakening. I view life itself as the Dharma Dhatu. You know, if you look at these pictures of mandalas and you really extrapolate the meaning behind it, they're talking about the inside and the outside of the psyche, how that life, how that the world and the heavens and the below is a reflection of the psyche. There's a verse in the Kalachakra Tantra which kind of mirrors the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below. It says, as within, so without. Now, I talk about this in my book, that really inside and outside are one. So upon reaching, going over the precipice of enlightenment, of duality and of non-duality, when you go over the precipice of that, when you are able in a Zen way to see through phenomena, to steady and ground your mind in the groundless Dharmakaya, the absolute unconditioned mind, the spacious Dzogchen-like mind, the primordial awareness, when you can ground your mind in that state, not being stuck on samsara or nirvana, not being stuck on here nor there, and viewing the polarities of those types, the polarity of inside and outside, samsara and nirvana, as both having the same essence, which is empty. When you can ground your mind like that, you see that all of this really is inside of your mind. And it's throughout our life that we cognize these objects through our senses, and we tell ourselves stories about them. We build our inner psychic life through our perception. Perception is the gate through which these objects around us, which appear to be around us anyway, enter into our mind and pattern our mind. Our mind really just consists, if we analyze it, of a bunch of ontological categories that we have derived from our cognition of objects. Again, this is entirely what my book is about. I promise I'm working on it. I'll get it finished soon. I need to just do a video of just reading my book. You know, it's coming along pretty well, almost done. So that's the backdrop of what I want to say. Now, me personally, when I first started on the spiritual path, I became a hermit. You know, life never sat well with me. I've probably gone over this a bunch of times, but I didn't derive much meaning from the humdrum kind of existence that I grew up around. I saw that it was deeply flawed, and I, just like the Buddha, I was raised in a wealthy area, Silicon Valley, and I ran away from it. I didn't pursue a career as a tech guy like my dad. I could have, but there was something missing. I saw the contradictions and the flaws of that existence, and I went out to seek more. You know, eventually, I had this spiritual transformation, and I kind of withdrew myself, and that's when I started making content. So you guys kind of met me. Some of you have been around for a while, kind of met me in that phase of my life where I was withdrawing inward and becoming a hermit. Now, I really, unfortunately, I think most people, probably the majority of people, are unable to thread the needle between samsara and nirvana. Most people, even spiritual teachers, seem to have a very standoffish view of samsara and view it as something that needs to be rejected, and you have to stay away from these degenerate things, especially the Abrahamic type approach. It's very dualistic, very, this is bad and you need to avoid these things. Now, when you're still clinging to these things as real, then yes, I think that there's a lot of merit to that. I genuinely think that if you want to embark on the spiritual path, just from the beginning, when you're a worldly, normal, samsaric individual, there's a lot of utility and usefulness to like get away from the cities, like go out into the woods, do whatever you got to do, go stay at an ashram, you know, get out of the cities and sit and be still and start to come and form a relationship and start to experience the real nature of your mind. So you in the very beginning, it pays dividends to withdraw from everything, because you still have all these, you know, samskaras, these impressions of your contact with that and the worldly consciousness. You still view all these things as inherently real, and you get sucked into them when you're too close to them. So it's really hard initially to do your spiritual practice when you're around the world. So you should initially withdraw, I believe, and take a good year or two as a hermit for sure. Now, I did that for like 10 years. And I thoroughly began to experience the unconditioned nature of the mind, the nirvana side of my being. I thoroughly began to experience that. Now, in Mahayana Buddhism, we don't stick on nirvana. And there's nothing to stick to regardless, you know. Samsara and nirvana are both sides of voidness. Both of them have the same nature. They're both connected to one another inside and out. So something that I dislike, even among Tibetan Buddhist lamas and teachers, I don't like that they seem to just be locked in like speaking Buddhist language. You know, they'll say like, oh, you just have to go out and have compassion for all beings. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? You know, like, what are we supposed to share with people? Oh, you sit with them and you share your heart and you bring them into the unconditioned state. Okay, great. Now what? Like, what do we do now? Like, what's the message that we give to sentient beings? Do we tell them, oh, you need to become monks? Like, this is why that I don't want to be a monk. I don't see any utility. Like, if I was to become a monastic, like, what am I going to tell normal people? Like, hey, you need to become a monk like me? Like, well, okay, now everybody's a monk. Okay, what happens then? Like, how is the world going to continue to exist if everyone's a monk? And I don't see the world as inherently bad, because again, I'm a tantric. I am thoroughly tantric, thoroughly Vajrayana. I don't see the world as bad. I see our perception as wrong. Our perception is impure. It's completely, thoroughly dirty with contact with ignorance and our karma and our bad choices and the low vibrational states that we act from, our selfishness when the ego thoroughly takes us over and we are an ego amongst egos. That is just a matter of perception, and it sucks us into it. So once we purify our perception of phenomena, the world becomes pure also. So I don't think that the message should be, hey, withdraw from the world because it's degenerate. I think that the message really should be to view the world as a mandala of awakening. Every phenomena, a synchronicity, every interaction, a piece of karma which can be transmuted and purified and made spiritual. That's what we do in generation sadhana. We dissolve our the elements of our body, and like in the death process, and regenerate the world as a pure form. So ultimately, that's what I truly deeply believe. That's not only a Vajrayana truth, it's also a Christian truth, and a Jewish one for that matter. That really is at the heart of the esoteric traditions of East and West, that the world is supposed to be transformed, transmuted, made into the New Jerusalem or Shambhala. The New Jerusalem or Shambhala, like Jesus said, heaven is not up in the clouds. If they point to you and say it's up there, then the birds in the sky will get there before you do. Rather, heaven, the New Jerusalem, is a transmutation of our perception. Shambhala is not somewhere in the Himalayas. Shambhala is just waiting on the periphery of our perception for us to draw it into existence. The Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, can come at any time. If you are internally in Satya Yuga yourself, you can recreate the world as a pure phenomena. So that's the basic thing. Now, I got stuck as a hermit, and I had severed all of my worldly attachments and my relationships, and what am I going to teach people? I can, share the unconditioned state, but then what are we doing? We're just kind of sitting around meditating. You see a lot of people get sucked in this trap of fixating on the unconditioned and seeing the world as something to be rejected. I've seen a lot of people, fuck up their lives for real by getting into that pitfall in spirituality. So there was a time, a couple years ago, where I consciously decided I need to jump back into the matrix. I need to jump back into samsara and purify it. I need to follow the threads of fate and act. I need to go forth and act. I need to bring the unconditioned, bring nirvana into the world. And that happens piecemeal, bit by bit, through our relationships, through the institutions and the organizations that we cultivate. That's a big theme in my book. These organizations, which are formed out of relationships, they're like a group consciousness. Now, they can be transformed and made nirvana, made nirvanic, and imbued with higher principles. And that's what we ultimately really need. We talk about it all the time, how organizations such as companies are corrupt, how organizations such as our families are cause us hurt and pain, and how they don't work. I believe that we can transform the world by purifying these organizational structures. Now, even marriage is an organizational structure. A relationship is an organizational structure. A family is an organizational structure. I use the term egregor for this. It's like a group identity, right? And so you have types of archetypes which form relationships with one another within these organizations, and they're usually hierarchical. Like a company has a president and middle management and a CFO and lower supervisors and ordinary employees. A family has a father and a mother and children. So a lot of the damage and the discomfort that we experience in life comes out of our improper relation, how that we mess up these archetypes relative to one another, and how other people mess up how our relationship to these archetypes from our childhood and from the organizations we've become a part of. We're all seeking that. Everyone is seeking for something to belong to. You see how much it motivates people. It's like we know inherently that there's this ideal which has to be brought into life, the ideal organization, the ideal nation, the ideal church, the ideal community, the ideal family. This is how that we are going to create a new earth, is by transforming these organizations and how that they relate to one another, to the point that they become like a perfectly structured body. You can actually extend that to say that there's cellular organizations that comprise our organs. God created the perfect organization, the human body, comprised that of all these constituent smaller organizations, organs, and lower than that, cells. And you go higher than that on a macro level. I make the case in my book that on the macro level, just as on a micro level, these cells comprise organizations such as my stomach and my spinal cord and my nervous system, and they cause the body to function completely and in a healthy way, which preserves its homeostasis. It's healthy relative to itself. It's a healthy, contained, homeostatic entity. Likewise, the earth needs to become that, and it can. On a macro scale, when we say, okay, we can look with a microscope and look down at the human body and see that there are cellular life communicating with one another and preserving the homeostasis of the body, forming into these organs and whatnot. So what's above? What's above us? And I make the case that what's above us is really what's within us. Memes. Ideas are our cellular macro life. So when our ideas are tainted, when our perception is impure, we suffer, and our organizations, our institutions that we create become corrupted, and they fail, just like a body which is unhealthy. And we're seeing that in the world. It's why that we're all going crazy. It's the main thing that we fixate and obsess about all day long. Like Israel is in the news a lot recently. Why? Because Israel is perceived as a corrupt organization, a nation state, which is corrupt. It's unethical. It's not homeostatic. It's waging war with its neighbors. It's persecuting certain people in its society. It's not homeostatic, right? It's like as if you have a body that's like fighting with itself, right? And has the potential to spread and fight other bodies, right? So we all know, like, this is like the progression of human life, and this is the human story, is the fleshing out of homeostatic organizations. And I make the case that the stories that we tell ourselves between these organizations, these archetypes, like the story of our mother and our father and our sister and our brother, inherently have ethical dimensions to them. So we're always cross-referencing and examining. When we talk to one another, we're telling each other stories about organizations which have an ethical bent. Like, that's the punchline of the stories that we tell ourselves about these organizations, right? It's like, oh, did you hear what so-and-so did? Oh my God, that was so wrong, right? Like, that's what we talk about constantly. Human consciousness, in my view, the mandala of the Dharma Dhatu of the life of the earth, is a self-referencing fractal organization that is seeking to complete itself within itself through us. If you understand what I'm talking about, I know I'm going off into la la land here. Please try to follow along. I'm zooming out, and I'll try to zoom in and, slow down and explain myself. Again, a lot of this is going to be in my book. So that's to zoom in on me in my life. When I go out, like tonight, I was the security lead for a sorority formal party or dance down in a very bougie neighborhood in Tampa called Hyde Park. I was the security lead for a University of Tampa sorority formal, and I view the potential inherent, the beauty inherent. I view all of the aspects of the human personality, which is manifest through these type of social environments, which are only brought out through these type of social environments. In fact, these social environments are inner parts of our psyche. I view my position relative to all these social environments as one of unconscious potential that is to be manifested. For example, if you are an antisocial person, if you get anxiety, or if you don't feel comfortable around people, it's like, why is that, right? Why is there that tension between you and other people? And I think we should examine this. And if we had the right ontological knowledge that I intend to issue through my book, I think that we would be able to see how that each relationship we have, each social situation we enter into, contains the potential to unlock parts of our psyche and a part of our persona and a part of our being, and open up the soul ultimately, which is the ultimate source of all of these organizations, the ultimate source of all of these living beings that exist as one dynamic collective consciousness. I view in our desire realm all of the wishes that people have, and all of the relationships that we create, all of the institutions that we create, all of the dreams that we dream, and all the things that we create in life and that we manifest in life. This is the potential of the Dharma Dhatu. This is the ultimate summum bonum of existence. I don't view that we should reject life. I don't view that we should reject everything on the earth. I view that we should bring it into consummate perfection through viewing ourselves as an avatar for all that is. And when we enter into a mandala, into a friend group, into a sorority party, we should examine what's going on in our psyche. Now, if there's anxiety, if there's some charisma to be developed, if there's some aspect of the personality which can be brought to its utmost manifestation, that's what we should intend to do. That's what we should have. At least I view myself that way, because I view myself as one with the primordial Bhagavan, who most beautifully and expertly took birth as Krishna. Krishna, as Srila Prabhupada taught, embodies all 64 ultimate traits of what he called the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, he also, to go back to what I was initially talking about, he taught, Srila Prabhupada taught that the absolute reality is kind of realized in three ways as a progressive realization. First, like I encountered, you have the impersonal, what he calls the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, which is just like this white light, right? Like the Dharmakaya. You first view God in this very like deconstructing kind of just white light, right? Like it dissolves, it burns through everything, right? So you fixate on that impersonal aspect of the non-dual absolute first. And then you see the Paramatma, the self, the supreme self. So you have like, first you have this impersonal energy, and then you have this supreme self. And then you finally, the summum bonum, you realize the Bhagavan aspect, the personality, like God actually as like the locus point, the focus, the center of the 1,000-petaled lotus, which just is like the receptive aspect of all of these energies, of all of the manifestation of the universe. Like he is like thoroughly enjoying and sporting with everything and everyone. And his essence is a sum total of all of the qualities of everything. That's how I view the Bhagavan, but only in the perfect way. He's like the ideal of ideals. Like every quality that's ever existed brought to their ideal perfection is the Bhagavan, and we in turn are a reflection of that in an imperfect and an impure and a corrupted sense, right? And that corruption is really just our ignorance and our wrong views that, again, we latched onto from our karma of being born here and mucking around in the false ego, and other people with the false ego and people with wrong views of reality. It just sucks us into it. It stains us and impresses on us. So I know I'm saying a lot, but to me, because I view myself as one with Krishna, because I view myself as one with the primordial person, when I look at myself in this camera here, you know what I see? I see not the perfect manifestation of, but the manifestation of the original primordial consciousness. As such, I view this human being that I am as having an ultimate blueprint, a pattern which takes after Krishna, right? So all of those artful displays of Krishna's personality, his magnetism, his beauty, his charisma, his physical beauty. I've been trying to work out. I'm still kind of fat. His eloquence, all of these personal aspects of that eternal center of the maelstrom of all existence and awareness, that eternal magnetic, that gravitational black hole which sucks all sensory data, all experience, all life into it, extrapolates all that data and manifests the ideal version of all of consciousness and life. I view myself as a reflection of that, and as such, I want to develop every part of my psyche that's not developed. So I view my psyche as, okay, so this is the fundamental thing that I wanted to say to, the people that are asking me these questions specifically, but in general. In Tantra, I keep bringing up the Vajra because it's perfect. It's a perfect symbol. Everything about our unenlightened nature is enlightened. What do I mean by that? I mean that every piece of our unenlightened nature, Nagarjuna beautifully describes it like butter inherent in milk, right? He says in the Dharma Dhatu Stava, in praise of the Dharma Dhatu, the reality, the element of reality, the nature of reality, the Buddha nature, the nature of phenomena. That's what Dharma means, phenomena, just things. The nature of things is like butter in milk. Vajrayana Tantra is an alchemy, a churning of that milk into the butter of Buddhahood. So every single facet of your life can become a perfect vector for the churning of the potential, the milk, into butter of enlightened qualities, of divine qualities. So I see every single impression in my psyche, every unconscious connection. I can feel it. If you meditate a lot, if you do a lot of spiritual practice over the course of your life, like I have now for almost like 10, 15 years, I can sense when something in my psyche is divine or if it's not divine. And generally, if it's not divine, it's because I'm in a low vibrational state and I understand that I'm having some kind of like hang up, the false ego has taken over my mind. And so in my psyche, all of these unenlightened, end results come, and you have the poisons of anger, lust, pride, envy, and ultimately just delusion in itself, which is the ego. So the ego and all of the things, I apologize if I'm not being very eloquent with this. I'm just trying to be thorough. The ego and all of the things which it owns are unenlightened potential, which can be purified and made into Buddhas. So when I go somewhere and I discover that through my interactions with phenomena, with different environments, different people, different organizations, I discover a challenge. I discover a part of my psyche that's uncultivated, myself as, a corporate leader, myself as a spiritual leader, myself as, a husband, myself as, all of these kind of archetypal roles that emerge out of these various organizations. As it turns out, really, this is what we're talking about, like this, the inner, outer, secret, and higher, all inner, lower parts of the mandala are different types of organizational structures, really. So when I find myself in a different environment, and I notice that I have elements of my psyche, of my personality, of my, ultimately my soul is the source of all of this, that need to be developed in order to make me into Krishna, the perfect summum ideal person, a Buddha. When I experience the tension between the ideal and the actual, and the ideal is there for me to manifest and to become, and I just have to like act and grow through that action, I want to do it. Anytime that I see something that makes me hesitant, whether it's me going up and talking to a girl in a bar, whether it's me saying something good to a stranger, whether it's me knowing that there's an ideal sentiment or idea that should come out of my mouth to this person, you kind of get a sense for this, and it's just like a voice that you have to follow and hearken to. I understand that that's me manifesting Shambhala. That's the avenue of New Jerusalem. That's the Christ seeking to take birth. So you ask me, why do I fixate on relationships? Why am I obsessed with women? Ooh. It's not just that. Ultimately, because really, as a man, what's the bigger embodiment of the not self? What's the bigger embodiment of the things which get our goat, which get under our skin and show us our flaws as men, right? Women, hello. Like, I know a lot of my alt-right friends are like super, super like fixated on the masculine. Yeah, I understand why that we do that. It's a reaction. We're reactionaries, which is, right? We're reactionaries. We were told all of our lives that men are bad and kind of feminized a little bit. We got a hangover from the 70s and shit, right? So we kind of react and like, intently focus on our masculinity. Nothing wrong with that. Like that is our archetypal self, right? But it's not the totality of the psyche. It's a manifestation of the totality of the psyche. But really, when perception is fully purified, when we become Buddhas, we can see that it's all archetypes that are imprinted on the absolute unconditioned mind, which is our fundamental nature. It's not just the archetype of our form here as a man or as, Caucasian or whatnot. That's a manifestation. Is a manifestation of our individual existences. It's a lens that we see life through. But when we turn that lens inward on the unconditioned, on the expansive space like Dharmakaya, it's really all archetypes which are caught up into that. So just like you see the Buddhas with the consort, with the prajna, with wisdom, right? And that's what that represents, that relative expression of the absolute, that dynamic and active aspect of the unconditioned as it relates to life. That's what the feminine represents. So as we see that, I view women as the active of the life principle itself. Like, women are life, just as men are consciousness, and we need one another. So in order to gel, in order to produce the new Jerusalem, men and women are the most important facet of this mandala we call the world, that need to gel, that need to be in harmony with one another. And we are not in harmony with each other. We are miserable. So that's why me, the universal world soul, is screaming out about relationships. It's the most fundamental archetypal organizational structure that is causing us so much misery because of our impure perceptions. And that hits right at the core of the issue. Self and other are not two, they are one when the mind is purified. Likewise, man and woman are not two, they are one when the mind is purified. There's a reason why Avalokiteshvara here is pictured as a divine hermaphrodite, right? The ultimate Bhagawan, Avalokiteshvara, is seen as a feminine man, or sometimes even depicted as Kuan Yin as a female, because it represents psychological integration. So in order to bring the world together, the most fundamental organization, the relationship between men and women and the family which emerges around it, all of our psychological issues come from family trauma. So we have to fix relationships. I can't take it when I see men and women, talking about how they don't need each other and being hurt. It comes from hurt. Like, who are you trying to kid? We absolutely need each other. I love women. Women, like when I was around, these are like the most beautiful girls, like 21, 20-year-old girls from around the fucking country. Just like every single one of them, just a fucking knockout. Like insane. The girls that I saw today at this, like 200 of them, man. Like I'm just like, they just light up the room. Like their energy just like overtakes you. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to have that radiant, active life principle. They're so alive, they're so social, and in that, it's just a natural wisdom. Like men are introversion, we're reflection, we're scrutiny, we're analysis, we're reason. Like we separate ourselves from phenomena in order to scrutinize it and analyze it and develop intelligence. That's what men are. Women are the phenomena. Women are the universe. They can't, like I wrote this in my book, like they can't tell you why that they know something. They just fucking know it. Like that's why they're all into astrology and shit. Men are just scratching their heads like, oh, stupid, what are you talking about? Women, they all know. They all know what a Cancer is. They all know what a Scorpio is. They all know what earth, water, fire, and air mean. You can ask them why that they know it. They just tell, I don't know, I just know it. Women are wisdom, the wisdom principle in Vajrayana. Men are the skillful means principle. And that's really what masculinity is about skillful means. What women want from us, they want a man who has that skillful intelligence, right? Like you alt-right guy who's listening to this, you're a big fucking dork and you know everything about, World War II, and you know everything, every little minutia about your little sect of Christianity and stuff. Has that gotten you any bitches, bro? No, it hasn't. Why? Women don't care about philosophical intelligence. They don't care about scientific they do care about street smarts. They don't care about book smarts. They want street smarts. They want skillful means. They want the man who is cunning. That's what really turns them on. You know what I mean? They see the man that is skillful at getting shit done in their life. You see the unity of the masculine and the feminine? It's getting shit done in your life, right? That's what's important. That's the application of consciousness to life. The application of intelligence to life is successfully navigating life. And that's what women see. Like, if you're like an Elon Musk, he has how many baby mamas? You know what I mean? He's a fucking nerd. If Elon Musk was just an autistic nerd, like some of you guys, sitting in their mom's basement, do you think any woman would want him? No. They want him because they see his skillful application of his autism. The connection to utility, things which are useful for life, transformative. And of course, they sense it through social status and whatnot, and that can get diluted. Don't get me wrong. I'm not just totally glazing you girls. I'm not. You guys are like, you're like blind sages, right? Like you receive the impulse, but you can't discriminate it. You just know that the impulse is coming to you. And a lot of times if there's like an overwhelming social impulse towards something that's wrong, you guys are going to pick it up and think it's right because you don't know how to scrutinize for yourselves. And that's why you need men, but that's a whole nother thing. I love women. And it hurts me when men and women don't get along because I know that that's the fundamental source for all of our misery. It's that schism which divides samsara from nirvana, which divides heaven from earth, which divides consciousness from life. It's that schism of men and women not getting along that perpetuates the trauma, that causes us to be fucked up, to develop psychological problems, to become consumed by coping mechanisms, drugs, alcohol, excesses of sex, excesses of pride, excesses of the poisons. It's through that schism of our mothers and our fathers, especially us who were raised by baby boomers, that caused us to not develop in a psychologically integral way, right? If we have an overbearing mother, we say that a person turns out to be neurotic. If we have an absentee father, we say that the man grows up to be a pussy, doesn't know how to make boundaries, right? Like, we're learning all now that all of our psychological conditions that cause us suffering, that cause us to be maladaptive, that cause us to not have a good relationship between ourselves and life, come from the original schism between the man and the woman, between the male and female principles, between our fathers and our mothers. So why do I obsess about women? If we don't bring men and women together and figure this out, if we're not able to have successful relationships with one another, like now, with everyone's a baby mama and a baby daddy, like these kids are growing up again, millennials, my generation and Gen Z, we are producing another generation of fucked up children. Why? Because for some reason, something's going on where men and women aren't able to make it work together. That's the potential. That's the butter which has to be churned, or the milk which has to be churned by the rod of the unconditioned. To draw out the enlightened message, the enlightened manifestation of relationships, to draw out the enlightened principle of man and woman, which is ultimately, about our mutual pleasure with one another. It's ultimately about the unity of the inside and outside, the unity of self and other, the harmony between consciousness and life. All of this is contained in how that men and women get along. So me personally, as an avatar, a bodhisattva here, hell-bent on resolving the paradoxes of sentience and helping humanity to create Shambhala, helping to immanentize the eschaton, as Terence McKenna called it, helping other people to see their life as the mandala of their awakening. I view my personal relationships as my praxis of my metaphysical theory. I view my personal archetypal manifestation in the context of various organizations, like in the organization called Tampa that I live in. I view the manifestation of the archetype of myself in these various organizational contexts, company, family, relationship, friendship, whatever, city, nation, religion. I view each of these facets of my persona as the milk, the raw potential, the raw potential energy that can explode into the mandala of enlightenment and manifest me as Bhagavan Krishna. And then once in the context of each of these organizations, I am able to achieve harmony with everybody in the organization, then they will see me unconsciously. They'll say, there's something about him. There's some qualities about him, and my qualities will absorb into them. And I've already seen this happening. Like, just the fact that I've been able to survive in a company for 2 years, being myself for the most part, like, hallelujah. Like me, Shaktipat Seer 2. able to exist in a worldly egregor organization. You know, when I first joined company and I became like kind of a leader, I viewed myself as like a radioactive fucking nuclear bomb in a fish tank. Just the radiation of my chakras just pouring off of me into norminium, into the unenlightened Dharmadhatu, and little pinpricks of that radiation from my forehead just poking little holes in the facade of the unenlightened world, letting in just tiny little transmutations, tiny little bit by bit alchemical transmutations. So that's it. That's what I'm talking about. Do you understand? Am I making it come through? First, it's for me, right? First, it's for me. It's benefiting me first. And we call this the two benefits in Mahayana Buddhism. First, it's benefiting me. When I am able to be myself in the context of a relationship as a man, when I'm able to go up to that woman in the bar and hit on her and establish, you know, my charisma and my magnetism and my charm, that makes me a more complete man. When I'm able to go into any social situation and develop the aspects of my character that need to be developed to make me more perfect, that benefits me. And then when I take those benefits and I bring them into an organization, that benefits others. So internally, I become Krishna for myself. Externally, I become Krishna for others. And that's how that we're going to make this world into the enlightened Dharmadhatu. Thank you very much. As an addendum to that, you know, as I'm here sitting alone in my apartment, I kind of remembered some of the other things that I wanted to say. So here I am alone, right? I feel lonely. Don't you guys feel lonely? I feel lonely. I feel like that there's something deep inside of me which is telling me that we ought to be a community. You know what I mean? There's something deep inside of me which is telling me that I'm not just an individual, and I become unhappy when I feel isolated. You know what I mean? I get neurotic, and my perception becomes impure because I think in my head, like, oh damn, like all of our organizations are all fucked up and nobody's happy and our relationships don't work. I really would prefer to be spending some time with a woman, to be honest. I don't think that any of those things are wrong. I genuinely think that we all have this deep yearning for community because in an ideal sense, we are supposed to transform this very not ideal community, the world that we live in, as part of the progression of the world, as part of the progression of the harmony of our organizations and the development of them and the way that they've developed, you know, from kingdoms to nation states and on and beyond. I think that we're really being called by the Logos to perfect these organizations. So when I think in my mind and I remember, like, damn, like, what am I going to do? You know, I think in my head, because I spent so much time like sitting around doing nothing. I'm like, oh, geez, you know, the world is so alien. It's so hostile. Like I'm just kind of just stuck here. You know what I mean? But that's not true. And thankfully, again, like milk and butter, because I've pushed myself and challenged myself to be more social, I know intuitively that I can go somewhere. I can talk to a woman at a bar. I can go and I can meet someone new. I can go and I can succeed at work. I can go and I can go to a new place that I've never gone before and meet some high level fucking property manager or business owner and walk up and shake their hand and introduce myself and provide them an excellent security service. Like, I know that I can do these things now because I've challenged myself and I've turned the milk of that impure perception into butter. So really, when we're sitting around and we're feeling alienated, it's just our memory of our impure perception and the Logos calling on us to make an ideal community with one another that happens through relationships.